This story is really about a period, a 24-hour period where a bunch of things happen. And I wish I was an artist. I could have paint all this into this great painting, because I think there's some really great little stories here that are part of one 24-hour great period of my life. So this goes back a few years, and I was on a canoe trip. I do quite a bit of canoe expeditions, and they're always epic with a group of good friends. And there's some Olympic paddlers on there, world champion paddlers, so we're really good paddlers. We usually end up going quite a long distance. And so I guess the first stroke of this painting that I could make is the river. It's on the Seal River in northern Manitoba. Past all the communities in Manitoba, it's pretty much in Nunavut, the river in northern Manitoba. So if you know your geography, it's way up there. And the Seal River is just a beautiful river, probably one of the best in Canada and the world. There's a famous paddler, actually. His name is Bill Mason, and if you know canoeing or adventuring, he was well known for paddling. He actually, when he passed away, he had his ashes scattered up on this river because he loved it so much. So it's a famous river, beautiful. And in the last 24 hours, we were 50 kilometers from the ocean. It flows into Hudson Bay. And we go through a section of the river where there's rapids, white water, and just like the river was actually, it seemed like you're flowing downhill and you're just going around and there's no time to stop. And it was a beautiful section of river, just continuous rapids, waterfalls, and kind of like that picture you see of those paddlers going over rapids. That was pretty much us just a few years ago. So there's the river. It's just a beautiful river, and hopefully you can go there one day, or if you want to go on an amazing trip, you should go see the Seal River. The second part, really, the stroke, is the sky. So we're paddling to Hudson Bay, and it's the 21st of June. And we ended up making the bay at midnight, or actually it was about 10 o'clock. And we had to start the second part of our journey at midnight, because that's when the tide was high tide there. And we wanted to get out into the ocean, and we're paddling from the mouth of the Seal River to Churchill, Manitoba, which is 70 kilometers away. We just paddled all day to get to the mouth of the river, and then we knew we had to go at midnight to continue paddling. So we'd already paddled a full day, but we continued. And the sky, it was midnight. The sky was on one side, so I was looking towards Hudson Bay, and I was standing out on the point, and on one side was the sun was up, and the other side the moon was up. So I had like these two worlds that I could see, and there was northern lights towards Churchill, and there was a little red light you could see 70 kilometers away. The airport light was blinking, and we knew that was our final destination. So there's this beautiful sky, and I just wish I could somehow put that. I think a painting would be able to capture that. Then the next real cool thing that happened that day was we got to my first encounter with a polar bear. And so we're paddling down the river, and we get to this point in the river where we went through a rapids, and we're kind of floating there. We're having a snack in this canoe. We paddle in one big canoe, 6 of us. And I looked ahead, and we kind of been excited. We wanted to see a polar bear. And so we had our cameras ready, but nothing. We're getting closer, and we look at the map. We're 10 kilometers from the bay. We're probably not going to see one. So we look ahead, and I see, some of the guys say, there's a swan. There's a swan floating up ahead. So I look towards the swan. I said, I don't think that's a swan. I think that's a polar bear. And so we look. Everyone puts down their paddles, and we're floating towards the current's taking us towards the swan. And we get a little bit closer, and sure enough, it was a polar bear. Its head was just its head was floating in the water. We couldn't see the rest of its body. But then it saw us at that moment, when we all finally realized that it was a polar bear. And suddenly its ears just went up, and its whole head came out of the water, and it saw us, and it started swimming straight towards us. And we've had encountered bears before, but the polar bear is the most aggressive bear there is, because it's the biggest bear. It fears nothing. So when it sees something, and usually in the summertime, it's in survival mode. So if it sees something, it goes and investigates. So it saw us and it headed straight towards us. The thing with polar bears is they're amazing swimmers, so we can't actually paddle away from it because they can swim so fast. And we're actually headed towards it. So we're heading towards the polar bear, we're getting closer, and well, everyone wants to get a picture too. So people get out, everyone's getting out their cameras, and then there's actually a little video of it, a clip where one of the guys is holding up the camera and he says, "It's fucking coming towards us." But he puts the camera down like, "Get the fucking gun." We had a gun with us, and one of our friends actually went on a trip on the Seal River a few years before, and he had to shoot a polar bear because it came towards him and it ripped through his tent. So we knew it was a possibility, and this polar bear was coming towards us, and if it would have just hit our canoe, we would have flipped over, easy. So we grabbed our gun, one of the guys in the front of the canoe, because we're floating towards it. I was in the middle of the canoe. He grabs the gun and he's pointing it at the polar bear, and the polar bear is now from me to the speaker towards us. And we have the gun pointed at the polar bear. And right at that moment, so when we travel around, we often make offerings. I'm Cree, and so it's a Native American Aboriginal from northern Saskatchewan. And my dad is too. He's with me on the trip, and we always make offerings wherever we go. And we had talked to some of the locals, and they said, there's a big rock that you'll pass. It's called Prayer Rock, and we always stop and make an offering. And right when we saw this polar bear, it happened to we were also looking for this big rock. So there's the polar bear, and this big rock was there. So my dad, we were actually thinking of making this offering. We saw the rock first before the seal, before the swan, which turned out to be the polar bear. We have a little thing of tobacco, and he had that close by him, and he grabs some of the tobacco and he throws it out, and he's ready to start paddling for some reason. We have the gun on the polar bear, and he's kind of steering the canoe. And right after he makes the offering of tobacco, the polar bear we could hear it smelling, and it turns the other way. Totally 90 degrees, and the wind was kind of blowing the tobacco towards the polar bear. And I don't know, I can't explain it, but like maybe it didn't like the smell of tobacco, but for some reason, we're no longer a meal option for us, for it. Swims to the shore, just kind of watches us, and heads off into the woods. We actually saw several other polar bears in that last 10 kilometers. We saw mother and two cubs, and this time we stayed on the other side of the river. We didn't paddle towards the mother and two cubs because that mother could tell was really annoyed with us. And we went to another little waterfalls, the final waterfalls, and we were portaging over, and one of our friends was back and he was sleeping, and we came running towards him because we saw there was a polar bear on the other side of him, and we were yelling, and it's deaf rapids, so he couldn't hear us. And so we had the gun because we thought, we'll go look at the rapids and he'll be safe over there. And we're walking, and then we turn and we see him sleeping, and there's a polar bear who was eating something on the other side of him. It wasn't threatening. So that's the polar bear encounter. Another stroke there, I wish was as we were paddling towards Churchill, Manitoba. There was the ice is open there. You could see actually icebergs out in the distance, and there was beluga whales were coming by our canoe, and you could see them just surfacing. They're probably wondering, what the heck is this? We had a big canoe. We're the size of a beluga whale. They're probably thinking, who is that little Johnny? He's lost or something? Like, why is he swimming upside down? And my dad said there was one beluga whale came, and it opened his eye and kind of looked at him, and then he said it winked at him. I don't know, but it did kind of look and kind of nudge the canoe a little bit, and so we got to see these beluga whales, the sky, the polar bears, and then one the last stroke of that 24 hours was the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes on the tundra are relentless. And I come from a place where there's a lot of mosquitoes. These mosquitoes, maybe it's because they don't see a lot of big sources of food, but they would just come to us instantly. Even at one day we were standing on the tundra and it was windy, and I thought, oh, there's no mosquitoes. And a guy took a picture of my back, and it was just covered with mosquitoes. But like my face was okay, but my back, they were hovering. So at this point, when I was looking at the bay out in the sky earlier on that night sky, I actually went out because I had to use the washroom. I had to take a poop. And so normally when you're out in the woods, you can kind of go and you find your little space, and you can just, you find your little spot, and maybe you find a tree. There's no trees out in the tundra. So I'm out there and I realize, you kind of have to keep moving. And I'm like looking at the sky and I'm thinking, I really gotta go. And so I've never had to take a running poop before. And I was thinking, I think I'm gonna have to. There's no putting this off. So I pulled on my pants and I kind of go like this, and I'm like going because the mosquitoes just go like this instantly, and then as men we got testicles too, so you gotta kind of go back and forth. And I managed to get it done, and that's my last 24 hours there on the canoe trip. Thank you.